Hello and welcome, I'm Thick Manatee. Today I'll be talking about something very special for the first time, my favorite thing in the entire galaxy. Today I'll be talking about Star Wars. I did make this video, but that doesn't count. Star Wars is my favorite franchise, and while I notice the issues with each piece of media, I can't help but love nearly everything about this universe. And a lot of people know about the original trilogy, the prequels, and the sequels. Despite negative sentiment in recent years, it's still one of the biggest franchises around. However, there are some stories that not everyone has heard of. The High Republic era, which is made up primarily of books, the various comic series that have filled in some of the gaps between the movies, and some of the animated works. Now, the Clone Wars and Rebels are pretty popular, especially thanks to the Ahsoka series that came out a couple years ago. But some people might not know about the Bad Batch or Resistance, and even fewer people have probably heard of an anthology series that has some of the most intriguing and unique premises in the entire franchise. That series is Star Wars Visions. In 2021, Lucasfilm released some original animated shorts. These 9 short stories were each created by a different Japanese studio. These non-canon anime-inspired Star Wars tales were all incredibly unique and were able to show some peculiar concepts that didn't need to adhere to any pre-existing stories. This combination of Star Wars and anime was really cool for a lot of reasons. One of which is the fact that the franchise was already massively influenced by Japanese culture. Also, since these shorts weren't in the traditional 3D animation that Star Wars has worked with for over 20 years, the Visions episodes were able to each have unique stories as well as unique art styles and animation. Season 1 was a fun little set of stories, but thankfully, things didn't stop there, and Lucasfilm continued to work on the Visions project. There was a second season that released in 2023 and had studios from various countries creating shorts instead of just Japanese ones. And near the end of 2025, a third season released which even had some direct follow-ups to some of the Season 1 episodes. And on top of that, they're even creating a whole mini-series about the Ninth Jedi story. So it seems like Visions is now more than just a fun little experiment. It seems like this is a new sort of subgenre within Star Wars, and it seems like they aren't slowing down anytime soon. I really enjoyed the first season and loved the incredible variety that was in Season 2. That season also had an episode that became one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars ever. And Season 3, in my opinion, does tread a lot of familiar ground, but still has a good amount of fresh ideas. And it also has one of the greatest pieces of animation I've ever seen in my entire life. So, because I haven't talked about these shorts before, and since there's a lot more on the horizon, I thought I'd make a video discussing my thoughts on Star Wars Visions. And I initially was going to talk about each episode, but I thought it'd probably be more compelling to talk about my favorites and why I think they're so special. I'll be talking about spoilers for everything here, so I'd highly recommend you watch the series if you haven't yet. And now, let's get started with the first short. I'm going to start with the episode that probably got the most buzz out of the whole series, the Ninth Jedi, which I think does an excellent job of blending the Japanese elements as well as the more traditional Star Wars elements. When this first released, this was the one episode that I heard almost everyone collectively enjoyed. Even if they didn't love it, they still at least liked what was there. And the folks at Production IG must have had some more ideas in the back of their heads, since this is one of the few episodes that got a sequel in Season 3. And this is the only short that will be getting an entire spin-off series in 2026. Now, it could be a small season of 8 or so episodes like Visions, or it could go on for multiple seasons and become a whole new section of Star Wars all on its own. No matter what that standalone series turns out to be, it's still impressive that this one short story was able to spawn a much larger work. I think it's really great that we'll hopefully be able to see the elements shown here in much more detail. Now, the strength of this episode lies not with the art or animation, but with the storytelling and world building. These things are able to be fleshed out in a much more unique way thanks to the lack of canon restrictions. There are so many things that won't happen or can't happen in the movies or other shows because
that's not how the Force works.
But because the Ninth Jedi and the rest of these shorts aren't shackled by those things, these stories can stick to the base framework of a Star Wars tale and build off that in new and exciting ways. And that's exactly how this episode is set up. The story begins in a more traditional manner where Jedi and Sith are at war in the galaxy and the Jedi are struggling. They are called to a secluded temple to gain new lightsabers in order to help fight back against their potential extinction. The Jedi who arrive are contacted by a man who calls himself a Jedi Master, but looks very suspicious and threatening, almost like a Sith. This gets the audience thinking that this will be a more traditional story where these Jedi have to find this Sith and take him down before anything worse can happen. But the uniqueness of this story begins when we are introduced to the protagonist and her father. Cara is a young girl whose father is a sabersmith, and that alone is such a cool thing. Having lightsabers be created in a way that swords in medieval times were created is so engaging and gives the weapons more of a dignified aspect. I love the normal way lightsabers are made, which is by the Jedi themselves, so that the weapon can be more personalized. But I really love the idea of this one man being so skilled at his craft that every saber he makes feels like it's been personalized and made with the utmost attention and respect. And that's not the only thing about these lightsabers that is fascinating. The sabersmith mentions that the crystals reflect the user's connection to the Force, which is something that I never thought would work so well on Star Wars. Traditionally, blue and green lightsabers mean the person is attuned to the light side, and red means the wielder follows the dark side. Very simple idea with some other colors and concepts mixed in between. In the Ninth Jedi, that still works the same way, but the person's alignment and intentions are shown primarily through the lightsaber that they wield. The blades don't all have static colors, but instead change along with the wielder, which is a very novel idea. It also allows for fantastic moments like the twist in this episode, where the individuals that you thought were Jedi are immediately seen in a different light when they ignite their blades. This is by far the best part of this story in my opinion, and I just love how ideas like this are used to represent the Force in refreshing ways. Because midichlorians or kyber crystals aren't the reason for this plot element, the Force itself is. Cara's saber turns a bright green when she begins to join the light side and use her power for good. The blade of this character named Homan begins to turn purple when he snaps out of the dark side fog that he found himself drifting toward while in the presence of the Sith. This concept happens as a result of these characters' interactions with the Force, and that is a pretty common thing to happen throughout Visions. The Force is used in ways we've never seen in the movies or TV shows, so we are allowed to get some distinctive views of it, and to me, that makes these stories all the better. So this strange yet remarkable use of world building for a world we've seen hundreds of times before is why I think The Ninth Jedi stands apart from the rest of the Season 1 shorts. And since I chose to talk about this episode, let me touch on the Season 3 sequel episode while I'm at it. The sequel, titled Child of Hope, is unfortunately for me not as special as the first part. I still really enjoy it and love other original aspects such as this gorgeous starship. Yes, this is a starship, not a planet. The visuals in this episode stand apart from the first episode for sure. However, the rest of the story feels a bit more simplistic to me. Cara lands on the ship and is rescued by a droid. She helps the droid, they both learn some lessons from one another, and then when she needs to escape bandits, the droid sacrifices itself to help her get away. It's good and entertaining, but none of what I just said is particularly groundbreaking. I also feel like the animation in this episode seems to lack some of the punch from the first short. They seem to have used a lot more 3D animation this time around, and it feels very noticeable, particularly in this fight between Cara and some bandits. I saw this and didn't really have much of a reaction, but in the first episode when we get this chase scene which highlights the art style more than the animation, I feel like it's much more focused and impactful. This fight in Season 3 is still fine, but it gives off more of a floaty vibe. I don't feel the danger or the urgency like I did with this chase scene. However, I still enjoyed it and am very interested to see where this story will lead in the main series since, again, this tale is far from over. And now with that episode out of the way, let's get back to Season 1 and talk about my personal favorite episode. Lop Ochō might seem like a strange choice for a favorite, but when I first saw this, I was absolutely enamored. The first interesting element of this story is the protagonist, who you'll notice isn't a typical Star Wars alien. Lop is a which is an alien species that has actually been in Star Wars since nearly the beginning. There was a character named Jackson in the original Marvel comics that came out the very same year as the first film. So they didn't just make up this species for this short. And some people find it weird that this alien species is just a talking rabbit, but honestly that doesn't seem like a real issue to me. We already have devil people, hammerhead shark looking guys, and little green Muppets that can lift things with their mind. A cute rabbit character is hardly the weirdest thing in this franchise. So Lop is an alien orphan who was also a slave and found herself wandering the planet of Tau. This planet is so compelling to look at, and I'm so glad it got as visually fleshed out as it did. This looks like a futuristic alien city, but it also has modern elements such as this giant marketplace. It looks like a bazaar or some other kind of street market that could be found in Japan or in any number of places around the world. This helps the world feel alien yet very familiar. There's also a very strong emphasis on nature and the spiritual in the story, as well as in the land itself. And this is contrasted by the equally strong industrial technology that begins to creep up and engulf the natural land. At first glance, this all reminded me of something like Spirited Away, but it more so reminds me of something like Republic City from The Legend of Korra. It's a large place with technology that seems very familiar, but one that has a lot of mysticism and old world ideals surrounding it. And that is the crux of this tale. Lop is taken in by Yasaburo, the leader of a clan, and his daughter Ochō, which introduces this recurrent plot element of many Star Wars stories. The found family concept is incredibly common throughout the franchise, and this is one of, if not the main reason why this short in particular speaks to me so much. Ochō sees Lop struggling and insists on her becoming a part of the family. But as the years go by, Ochō and her father no longer see eye to eye on some very important topics in their lives, mainly the benefit, or lack of, from the Empire. Yasaburo is an older, wise man who sees that his home, which was so beautiful and vibrant and full of life, is being slowly chipped away in favor of the industrial machines that the Empire is putting on the planet. Ochō understands that, but she ultimately sees the Empire as a way to improve the lives of everyone on Tau, and she thinks true progress cannot be made without the Empire's resources. And I find this quarrel so very interesting to see, especially now, 4 years later in a very different world, where this message feels a lot more poignant. You can easily equate this to something else Star Wars like the Gorman occupation in Andor, or you can compare it to the current real-life complications with generative AI. Ochō throughout the story seems to go down a type of path that people in our real world do with AI. She says that the Empire is a necessary evil. It's something that will lead to a better world for everyone, and she essentially says their involvement is inevitable. Later on, when she fights her own father, she says, "You left me no choice," which is an obviously foolish thing to say. She reminds me a lot of people, mainly companies today, that say things like generative AI is our future, this is unstoppable, so get used to it, we don't have a choice. But just like with Ochō and her views of the Empire, she is making that choice. She is making the domination of the Empire an inevitability. Their power over this planet was not always going to happen, but when she gives up the right to choose, then of course their takeover will come to be true. It's so fascinating that this small plot element in this 19-minute story from 4 years ago can feel so relevant in the present day. And this disconnect between these family members is once again the most engaging part of the story for me. Ochō is Yasaburo's blood relative, yet she treats him like he's some common man who doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. While on the other hand, Lop, who just fell into this family, respects her father and sister much more and just wants the best for everyone. This way of thinking leads her father to share the legacy with her, and I love how this Jedi history lesson is shown. Yasaburo shows Lop their family lightsaber, which was passed down for generations. And it's a little ironic that she is now the one who wields this blade, yet she has no direct blood relation to this family. However, Yasaburo said it himself, inheritance has nothing to do with blood, which I think perfectly sums up this whole story. Lop is gracious and respectful enough to see the things that her father is trying to teach her, while Ochō thinks that since she is the next heir of their clan, she must start making decisions as soon as possible and thinks she already has all the right answers. And these two differing worldviews lead these sisters to clash with one another, which is just a prime example of the tragedy of Star Wars. Both these characters want what's best for each other, but the way they see the world and the way they have been conditioned to react to it has changed them so much that they are forced to be at odds. It's a really common idea in Star Wars, like I've mentioned, but I feel like this episode illustrates this dilemma so very well and in such a short amount of time. And on top of that, the visuals of this episode elevate this tale to an even greater level for me. The art on display in this episode is breathtakingly gorgeous. The way that these city sites are drawn to be welcoming yet overbearing. The way that the Yasaburo clan home looks like a traditional and familiar Japanese residence, while also looking like it fits perfectly on this specific planet. The way that the Force is represented in a visual manner, something that I can't remember being done too often in other Star Wars media. Showing these magical looking rings of power that have beautiful calligraphy within them adds so much more of that spiritual presence to this scene. And shots like this of the home sitting calmly among the shining night sky is just baffling. Like seriously, how can they just make this one shot look like a masterpiece and not have anything really going on in it? And then later they combine that optical delight with the family drama. Like, come on, look at this. Having the Star Destroyer hovering slightly above this base so that these tragic opponents can fight against cherry blossoms flowing in the wind. And then, to finish this off, I think the story wraps up so perfectly. It's a very bittersweet ending where Ochō leaves and Lop remains with the hope that she will save their family one day. This story could end here and feel adequate, or they could someday make a sequel episode to this and I would be absolutely ecstatic to see what happens. Either way, the story is incredibly satisfying and man, I just love almost every element here. The jaw-dropping visuals, the infusion of mysticism with this ever-growing infestation of industry, the strong emotions, both positive and negative, between these found family members. Everything here just screams Star Wars to me, and that's why Lop Ochō is my personal favorite episode of Star Wars Visions Season 1. And so with that, we're done talking about specific episodes from this season, so now I'm going to move on to Season 2. As I said earlier in the video, Season 2 didn't just have shorts made by Japanese studios, it instead went worldwide and had a huge range of animation studios show us their takes on Star Wars. There were multiple shorts from Spanish studios, a French one, a Korean one from Ireland, one from India, and one from a studio named Triggerfish, who are located in South Africa. And they made the first short of Season 2 that I want to discuss. Aou's Song is a precious story that contains animated puppet-like characters that help draw you into this cute and cozy little corner of Star Wars. And similarly to the Ninth Jedi, I want to talk about this episode in particular because of the incredibly fresh and imaginative view of the Force displayed here. That fresh view comes from the fact that this story focuses heavily on song, as the title would imply. Aou is a young girl who is shown from the start to be naturally drawn to music and song. She likes to sing and even hears distant melodies on the wind, and in reality, she is hearing them through the Force. The episode begins by stating that kyber crystals, the ones that are used for lightsabers, have been poisoned by Sith and are now corrupted. We see this in action when Aou's father shows a red crystal to a Jedi and it burns him. And what caused that reaction? Aou's voice. She heard a faint song through the Force when she was in close proximity to this crystal, and the act of her singing along caused her father to be slightly hurt. And this is where I began to notice something much different on my rewatch of this episode. Originally, I knew the short had a strong emphasis on song and its connection with the Force. However, this time around, I realized that the main theme of the story is likely a much more personal one that many people can relate to in real life. Aou loves to sing. She loves song and music and the emotions that those things evoke in her that she can't explain. But she is told not to sing by her father. And while he doesn't seem malicious about that, he is still inadvertently stifling his daughter's voice. I noticed this time that she is often shown to be covering her mouth with her scarf, and initially I thought nothing of that. I thought she was just shy. Now I realize that she was probably subconsciously trying not to make any noise. She was trying not to make a peep because bad things came of it. But we find out that the actual bad thing was her not being able to embrace her voice. She stumbled upon a cave filled with kyber crystals because she heard the song. It wasn't some loud music that everyone around, like the miners, could hear. Only Aou heard the tune. It's almost like the crystals were calling out to her specifically. She was gifted enough to hear them, and she was the only one with the power to heal them. She and the people around her, like her father, of course, didn't realize this. So while she tried to sing back to the crystals, she was interrupted, and that caused trouble. The way I see it is that the crystals that were poisoned were calling for help. The light buried beneath the dark was trying to escape. However, because Aou lost focus, the dark side grew stronger and pushed the light away again. And when Aou realized that her voice actually helped instead of hurt, she was able to put an end to the coming earthquake that the darkness was causing. And this was the moment that actually made me tear up this time. I realized that the whole point of this story was to show a young girl discovering her voice. And not just the one that comes from her mouth, but also the one that comes from her soul, her creative voice. And all these themes wouldn't even be possible if not for this fascinating initial idea of giving a connection between song and the Force, which to my knowledge has never been done before in any other Star Wars story. Music is a massively important part of Star Wars, but from a non-diegetic standpoint. That means the music that we as an audience hear. That is the most influential music in Star Wars, not the music that's played in the cantina or nightclubs. But Aou's song chooses to put music and its spiritual connections at the forefront of the story, and I think it is immensely inspiring as a result. I don't have too much of a connection with music from a personal standpoint. I tried to play guitar and piano in the past, but wasn't motivated enough to stick with it. However, I still adore music, and it's one of the things in this world that can affect me the most. Part of the reason I love certain Star Wars moments so much is because of the music. But I want to say all this because if I, as a pretty average music enjoyer, can see these connections and messages from the short, then I can't imagine how impactful and empowering the story might be to someone who feels or has felt like Ahsoka at some point in their life. This short is just so enchanting. It helps you feel the magic of the Force, the wonder of it, and the magic of music, whether it's in a story or in your own personal life. So those are the reasons I love Ahsoka's song and why I think it's one of the best shorts of Season 2. It blends together so many compelling ideas, childlike wonder and whimsy mixed with feelings of caution and uncertainty that can easily be combated with one simple thing: following your heart and listening to the music on the wind, using the creative voice inside you to better your own life as well as the lives of those around you. Unfortunately, in a lot of Star Wars tales, Force-sensitive children are either taken away forcibly, given away, or guilted into becoming a Jedi. With Ahsoka, she is told of her strong connection to the Force and is given a choice to use her voice of her own free will. And because of that, I can envision a future where she becomes a powerful Jedi who will be generous and encouraging toward other younglings who may be hiding from their true potential. I realize that I really love Season 2 of Visions because the choice to offer studios from all around the world a chance at creating Star Wars stories gives each team so much freedom. Of course, the Japanese studios in Seasons 1 and 3 still had that, but with Season 2, it just felt like these folks had a lot more fun with their ideas and also had very personal tales they wanted to share. And there's one more episode from the season that I want to discuss, but it's the most special story of the entire series to me, so I thought I'd save it for last. Instead, I'm going to jump a little out of order here and head into Season 3. Now, Season 3 just came out in October of 2025, so it's still very fresh at the time of recording. I only watched every episode very recently, so I haven't sat with all these episodes as long as I have with the first 2 seasons. But overall, I thought this was another wonderful set of stories. I do feel like there were a lot more episodes that felt like traditional Star Wars. Like, they didn't change too much of the core formula and didn't have too many unique things that I've never seen. I still personally enjoyed them all, but I feel like with some episodes there's a lot less for me to gush over. Despite that, I have 3 episodes I want to talk about for this section. I still primarily want to talk about 2 like I did for the first 2 seasons, or will do, because I haven't talked about the second episode of Season 2 yet. And I did briefly talk about the Season 3 episode of the Ninth Jedi. Okay, so my format is all messed up now anyway, so whatever. I'm only going to briefly talk about a 3rd episode, but yeah, I really want to talk about the Duel Payback. The Duel was the very first episode of the first season, and it started things off with a bang. It was all in black and white except for the color of blaster bolts and lightsabers. It had film grain and other art and animation choices that made it look like those classic samurai films of the 1960s. It had a Sith with an umbrella lightsaber. If you think this is stupid, good for you, I guess. I personally think having these crazy lightsabers adds so much fun to some of these shorts. Think about how many people freaked out over this, or this, and this. Wacky lightsaber designs are always a welcome part of Star Wars, and you can't tell me otherwise. But yeah, the Duel was a great introduction to the concept of visions and told a decent, fun story. However, people really enjoyed this episode. So much so that it was one of the few to get a direct sequel in Season 3 with the Duel Payback. And I personally enjoyed the first episode, but didn't go too crazy over it. But Payback is something else, man. I adore this one. They improved in so many ways here. The protagonist of the Ronin does more cool stuff, fights in more awesome locations, and gets slight backstory alongside this new cyborg fallen Jedi character. We get a longer episode that brings new ideas like a truce between the Ronin and his target, an entire militia of folks trying to fight back against this Jedi who seems to be more deranged than any Sith. And the most important part by far, Ewoks. I'm slightly joking, but I'm also completely serious. I know. How do teddy bears take down the evil empire? By killing all the lame soldiers with expertly laid out traps, man. Come on, they show you right there. And they show you right here, too. The Ewoks are in the snow, and they have scuba gear, and can fight on bridges and open areas, and not just in the trees and bushes. Ewoks are so cool, man. Look at this. How much more proof do you need? Anyway, yeah, I won't go into too much detail about this episode, but I wanted to say something about it because I really had a blast watching it. If they made a standalone series for the Ronin character, I'd be all over that. So with that Ewok propaganda out of the way, let's talk about an episode that surprised me with how much it changed my mind from beginning to end. At the start, I thought the Bird of Paradise was gonna be a simple, flashy, action-packed episode. Something that was just gonna be a cool take on Jedi. However, similarly to Nakime, I just needed to have some patience so the true beauty of this world could be presented. This story is yet another one that relies heavily on the Force and showing it in a different kind of light that we haven't seen very often. Nakime, our protagonist, is a headstrong and selfish Jedi whose own ego causes her to be blinded in battle. Immediately, this made me think of the most familiar blind Jedi, Kanan Jarrus. Kanan was more of a stoic person early on in Rebels, but he too had a bit too much impatience within him, and he was blinded in battle as well. Once that happened, and once he learned to form a deeper connection with the Force, he became an incredibly powerful and selfless Jedi. However, there were a lot of other things going on in that show, so I feel like there was never a massive focus on his impairment. This story chooses to focus entirely on Nakime's journey from losing her sight to finding peace within this new reality. And this episode charts this path through a neat little format. For 5 days, we follow Nakime's struggle to reconcile with her fate and come to terms with how things are now. On the first day, she is insolent and thinks that this shouldn't have happened because that Sith wasn't even that strong. Or the Jedi should have taught her better instead of always lecturing her. This then leads to her desire to gain a better connection with the Force. However, that desire is ultimately very selfish because she doesn't really want to attune to the Force, she just wants her vision to be restored, which then leads her to indignation. She thinks that this isn't fair and shouldn't have happened to her of all people. She never deserved this fate, and that takes her down a path of idleness, where she believes that she's just gonna die, so why try to fight that or trust in the Force? Either path is pointless. But once she realizes what she has been doing this entire time, how she has stubbornly avoided her teachings and the messages that are being given to her, the prayer for life is finally answered. This format is unique to this episode, and I think it perfectly shows off the short yet impactful journey that this young Jedi goes on. We get to see her trials and how she eventually overcomes them, and the way we see that is incredibly well done. This entire episode has a 3D animation style that looks a little more realistic, but when Nakime taps into the Force around her, the entire world becomes a living tapestry. Everything looks as if it was painted and drawn in the perfect way, which not only looks gorgeous, but also relates to the themes of the story. When Nakime is going about things in the wrong way, the world around her is filled with darkness and she can only feel the land through touch. However, when she starts to trust in the Force, the world around her lights up and shines brighter than the real one. The trees guide her down the path. The leaves show her that she is still struggling against the current. And the water lets her know that she is on track to reaching her full potential. Everything is perfectly in order when she believes in the Force. And while these Force visions are happening, we get some really impressive visual messages put on display. I love how when she is feeling the pull to the dark side, she is shown to be trapped in a web, illustrating how dangerous and inescapable that path can be. Also, when she fights her own personal dark side, which on its own is such a cool decision, she begins to sprout wings of fire, almost like a phoenix. And that is the bird mentioned in the title of the episode. Her journey relates closely with that of the phoenix because she eventually burns away all the rage that was inside her. But instead of the fire going out, she is reborn into something greater and is able to rise from the ashes of her arrogance and reluctance as she is led to paradise. I was completely entranced by the visual messages shown in this episode, and I think this is such a fantastic way to tell such a deep and personal story. Sight is such an important part of most people's lives. It's certainly the most important part of mine. This is the thing that holds my life together. Movies, TV, animation, video games, all things that primarily require sight. I could imagine that if I were in a similar situation to Nakime, that I would have the hardest time of my life coming to terms with that reality. But I think it's nice to know that even if your entire world feels like it's fading away, literally before your eyes, there can still be beauty and hope in the world around you. I think this is a very powerful episode, and like I said, I wasn't expecting to like this one as much as I did. The visuals and deeper themes really latched on to me and gave me a lot to think about. But if you assume this was the most thought-provoking episode of the season, boy do I have a big surprise for you. The last episode of Season 3 that I will discuss is one of the most introspective tales that I've ever seen come out of Star Wars, and I don't know how something this thoughtful can even be possible. But this episode is real, and I personally think it is the most profound story in the entire series. Black is an abstract tale that is beautifully hand-drawn, has no dialogue aside from a man's unsettling grunts, as well as a woman singing, which is also a little unsettling. It shows visuals of giant eyeballs and zombified-looking stormtroopers, gravestones and horses and other disturbing yet gorgeous designs, which are all accompanied by this sweet jazz music of all things. This is a stunning tale that shows the destruction of the Star Wars galaxy in both a physical and mental capacity. There was so much to dissect from this short, and I had to watch this multiple times just to make sense of things. Sort of. Seriously, I watched this 3 times and I still feel like I don't know what I watched. But I do know that it's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. Man, this story begins with simple, rough lines, then explodes into color, filled with familiar sights like a space battle around a Death Star. We are shown the inevitable destruction of that space station, and then we are treated to an onslaught of visual chaos. 2 stormtroopers, who are presumably the exact same man, fight with one another and try to grapple with the haunting reality surrounding them. The war among the stars rages on, and despite having a purpose and meaning, in this moment they seem to be futile conflicts that will ultimately be for nothing. These men still suffer at the hands of circumstances that are bigger than them. They still yearn to feel something comforting or familiar aside from death and destruction. And yet, they can never escape those things, even when considering life and the beauties it holds, like the loud, rushing waters, the comforts of a community, or the cool breeze on a peaceful day. The cycle of death is ever present in these soldiers' minds. The tune of a lover can soothe the soul, but it can't change the fact that this galaxy will never be truly free from turmoil, no matter how hard the forces of light or dark try. Those are the concepts that I can personally gather from the beginning of this story. After that, the short begins to show what I could only describe as dreamlike visuals, which I would think troops often see in times of great hardship or at the ends of their lives. There's a big focus on eyes in this story, and that begs the question, what do those eyes see? How much chaos have they witnessed? How many satisfying memories have they beheld? What wonders are left to see? What will be the last thing they are laid upon before they are shut forever? So many questions can be asked from any number of moments in this short. You could focus on the eyes or the colors of the troopers, the various battles and emotions that are put into art instead of into words. Even the song that is played in the background asks a multitude of questions. Titled "Two of Me," this song focuses on seemingly 2 individuals, but perhaps it's meant to be about 2 halves of the same whole. Reunited at last, I'm claiming my past. We're one and the same, I know now. Are these lyrics about a man and a woman trying to retain their shared connection? Or are they about an individual who's coming to terms with all the atrocities he was a part of, willingly or not? So many questions. And again, you could pick apart almost any aspect of this short and still get more and more questions. And I believe that the purpose of this story is to find which ones resonate with you the most and answer them yourself. In a video from the official Star Wars channel discussing this short, Shinya Ohita, the writer, director, and artist of Black, stated that he wanted to explore the inner conflicts of a stormtrooper since they aren't typically even seen as human. And I find that so fascinating because from this 13-minute short, I can easily feel more connected to a normal stormtrooper than I ever could in the past. These faceless soldiers are meant to be seen as lesser beings, who are simply the metaphorical face of the most evil ruling government the galaxy has ever seen. But it's also logical to assume that since these people aren't clones created on Kamino and are naturally born human beings, that they wouldn't be as robotic or unfeeling as they are made out to be. They're still terrible individuals that deserve to lose the war and be persecuted for their crimes. However, this is a glimpse into how some of those troopers might reconcile with that outcome, if they are even given the chance. That's about everything I can personally take away from this story, and I hope I was able to convey my thoughts adequately. And I hope I was able to describe why I love this episode so much. And if you don't like this episode, I genuinely feel sorry for you. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I mean that in the way that I feel sorry that you don't understand this the way I do. You don't see it the same way I do. It doesn't connect with you, and you might feel like it was a disappointment or a waste of time. I'm sorry you feel that way, because it feels so refreshing to me to see something this special and unforgettable and having all these varying emotions within me. I don't fully get the episode either. I tried my absolute hardest to write what I did for this script, but the experience is what's truly special to me. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and definitely haven't seen something like this from Star Wars. When else will I ever get to see something like this again? When will I see something that feels so ethereal like this? Black is haunting and breathtaking and surreal and other big words that I don't know that still probably wouldn't be enough to describe how magical this art is. This is a true vision, a true look at the world of Star Wars through Shinya Ohita and David Productions' eyes. No one else could put out this story the way they could. And that's why this short is the most special in my eyes. However, while I think this is the most special from a technical and artistic standpoint, there's one more episode that hit me on a deeper level. One that connected with me so heavily, and one that reminded me of all the elements that make Star Wars the most special piece of entertainment in the galaxy. Star Wars at its very core is about many things. Found family, or family in general, treating others with respect and care, and when necessary, fighting back against tyranny so that peace can remain. But the number one thing that is at the very heart of this universe is hope. Hope that someone out there will come along and help the downtrodden rise up and take back their home. Hope that despite arguments and personal struggles, family members can live together in harmony. Hope that the memories of loved ones will live on long past their deaths and carry newer generations forward into a brighter future. All these things are on display here in the stars, which is a very simple Star Wars tale overall. But the way Punk Robot Studio tells this tale made me so incredibly emotional, and I hope that I'm able to share with you the reasons why. In the Stars follows two sisters, Tichina and her older sister Koten. Tichina is bright-eyed and optimistic, while Koten is more logical and pessimistic. Their home planet has been invaded by the Empire, and the occupation is so intrusive that the land itself is dying. The skies are blotted out by smoke, and the girls can't even get fresh drinking water because it's all being hoarded away in a factory. But Tichina is determined to fight the Empire and disrupt their occupation entirely. Koten is against this idea because their mother, who was a Force wielder, wasn't strong enough to stop the Empire and was killed along with the rest of their entire people and culture. This premise alone is both very common among Star Wars stories, but is also a timeless tale that can be told again and again throughout history. People are always being oppressed in some way, unfortunately, but stories like this one remind us that even in the face of absolute domination, we can't give up hope. And that's exactly how young Tichina sees things. She reminds her sister of their people and their legacy through these paintings which seem to be based in the Force. These lights dance upon the rocks and tell a story that is both enlightening and tragic. And I just gotta say that I really love when animated works do stuff like this. They use a unique form of animation inside an already unique form of animation. This whole short is made in a 3D style that has a stop motion-like quality to it, which makes these characters feel like they were handcrafted and treated with such attention and reverence. The combination of that style with these light drawings that shine across the stone is so enthralling. You can't take your eyes off them. But despite all these stories about how strong their mother was, Koten still doesn't believe that they can make a difference. She doesn't believe in the Force, and more so, she doesn't believe in her mother, her sister, and even herself. So when she does her usual thing of sneaking in, Tichina follows and is caught, forcing Koten to rescue her. Again, this is all straight out of plenty of familiar Star Wars stories. Someone with a lot of experience could easily complete this job, but someone with a lot of determination has to inadvertently mess everything up. Tachina means well. All she wants to do is free her home from the clutches of this evil regime. But she isn't as prepared as her sister and is almost made to join the rest of her family. However, despite not believing in the strength of the Force believes in Koten and allows her to save her sister. Tachina's constant belief and hope finally spread to her older sister in the most dire of times. And now the sisters are finally able to use their power to take down the Empire for good. And yeah, I know this is essentially the power of friendship, power of family kind of trope, but is that really such a bad thing? This episode perfectly illustrates how believing in some greater idea like the Force can bring you success. But more importantly, belief in your family and loved ones, belief in yourself, those beliefs will give you true power. Even though logically these sisters probably shouldn't have fought this fight, they believed in one another's abilities and strengths and were able to rid their world of the plague that was infecting it. Now they are free from tyranny, and while they still won't be able to get all their people back, their memories will live on forever among the stars. And those memories will allow these sisters to do truly great things. This is why I love Star Wars Visions. This story is very simple at its base level. Two sisters are the sole survivors of an Imperial occupation and have to come together to defeat them. That's pretty much all there is to this story, but the presentation is what makes it so powerful and memorable to me. Seeing these gorgeously designed characters in this tainted yet beautiful world with the traditional ideas of family and hope at their backs makes me feel that childlike wonder for Star Wars that I felt all those years ago when I first fell in love with this universe. I still love current stories like I mentioned. I enjoy The Mandalorian and Boba Fett, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, even if they aren't that original. I still enjoy seeing those typical themes on display in those shows. But because something like In the Stars puts so much effort into making those same themes feel fresh and original, I immediately form a much stronger connection with that story and the characters. I only saw this short one time before rewatching it for this video. One time, 2 years ago when it released. But I couldn't stop thinking about it for all that time because it left such a lasting impression on me. Thanks to the undeniable passion that the creators of this short put into it, I was able to have a new vision in my head of what the most special kind of Star Wars story can look like. And for that, I am immensely grateful. I haven't been having a very good past few months in terms of mental health lately. I've been struggling a lot, but at the back of my mind, I always have this hope present. Hope that things will work out for the better, eventually. As long as I keep believing, like these sisters, that things can change, I know that I'll be able to keep pushing on. To me, what makes Star Wars Visions so special are the characters, music, visuals, and most of all, the diversity. The diversity of those characters, of the music, of the visuals, the diversity of the designs, planets, art styles, animation styles, the diversity of the weapons, the droids, and the starships, the diversity of the studios from around the world that can show us what their vision of Star Wars looks like. This universe has always had inspirations from various cultures around the world, but to see those cultures tell their very own stories instead of seeing those ideas through American creatives is incredibly refreshing. Everyone at Lucasfilm does a good job most of the time of respecting the cultural concepts they use, but it's a much different experience when we get to see the people who have those cultures ingrained into their art tell a tale in a galaxy far, far away. I love Star Wars more than anything. And I've had the thought before of maybe I should be a Star Wars channel. Maybe I should talk about all Star Wars. But I hate to admit that not all Star Wars is special. At least, not to me. It is special. I do love everything for one reason or another. Yes, even things that completely let me down, like The Rise of Skywalker, still have a little something that I can enjoy. But that is the most beautiful thing about this galaxy. Someone out there in this great big world of ours can resonate with something differently. The folks who first got a glimpse of this world in 1977 feel strongly about the original vision. The people who were born in the 90s and grew up in the early 2000s, like me, have such a fond, nostalgic view of the prequels, even if they are messy at times. There are folks who wanted much more out of the sequel trilogy and were left unsatisfied. Yet they hold on to the relationships and small moments that brought them happiness, even for just a moment. There are little children who will see young Jedi adventures and be captured by this fantastic land just like the rest of us were in some other story. There are people who grew up alongside Ahsoka Tano and have seen their positive and negative growth reflected through the trials of young Jedi like her across the galaxy. There are people who feel hurt and shunned by the modern world and feel seen through the struggles of Mon Mothma and Cassian Andor and are reminded that hope is worth fighting for. There are so many avenues and adventures and legends to be seen in Star Wars, and no matter how big or small they may be, someone will find that special connection. Someone will see something new for the first time, be struck with inspiration, and find a renewed appreciation for art and the real world we live in. That is why I think Star Wars is so special at its very core, and thanks to stories like the ones told here in Visions, we can see what Star Wars means to so many different studios and the people who work tirelessly to put their voice out into the world for us to connect with. And that human connection, even if it's indirect, is sorely needed right now. So with that, I'm finally done talking about my favorite episodes from Star Wars Visions, and I hope I was able to relay my feelings and help show why some of these stories are so impactful to me. If you've seen Visions and have other favorite episodes, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. I'd love to see other people give differing opinions on some of these stories because I'm sure everyone will have their own personal favorite. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider checking out some of my other work. Maybe like my last video where I talk about my experience with fighting games and how I got more into them. If you found this video entertaining, feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more. I'll see you around, and may the Force be with you.